They called it the Dark Between, that vast emptiness where even the bravest civilizations feared to venture. For 3 million years, the Galactic Council had maintained their borders, their trade routes, their carefully negotiated peace treaties. Every species knew their place in the cosmic order. The Zephyrians controlled the inner systems with their psychic networks. The Korthak hegemony dominated the outer rim with their bioengineered armies. The crystalline Nexari held the ancient knowledge that kept hyperspace lanes stable. But humans? Humans were barely a footnote in galactic history. A primitive species that had only just discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. They were supposed to stay in their tiny corner of the galaxy, grateful for the protection and guidance of their betters. So when Admiral Vextar of the Korthak Third Fleet detected an unknown vessel moving at impossible speed straight through the heart of the Dark Between, his first assumption was system malfunction. When his sensors confirmed the readings, his second assumption was that one of the Council races had developed new technology in secret. His third assumption died screaming when the vessel failed to respond to any known communication protocol, refused all attempts at interception, and continued its relentless course toward the Empire's most sacred world, a course that would take it directly through the combined might of 7 different species' defense fleets. The vessel's hull bore markings in a primitive script that the translation computers struggled to decipher. When they finally succeeded, the words sent chills through every bridge crew in the sector. Terran Deep Space Exploration Vessel, property of Earth, in the depths of space, something that should not exist, was about to remind the galaxy why humans had survived the Dark Between when so many others had not. And it wasn't slowing down for anyone. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Defiant Dawn, watching the swirling colors of hyperspace stream past the reinforced viewports. The ship hummed with quiet efficiency around her, its fusion engines pushing them deeper into unknown territory than any human had ever traveled. 3 years into their deep space mission, they had mapped 17 star systems, cataloged 43 potentially habitable worlds, and made first contact with exactly 0 intelligent species. That was about to change. "Captain," called Lieutenant Commander Zhang from the sensor station, his voice tight with excitement. "I'm reading massive artificial constructs ahead. Multiple gravity signatures, energy readings off the charts. This isn't natural." Elena moved to stand behind him, studying the cascade of data flowing across his screens. Her heart rate quickened as the computer translated the raw sensor input into something her human brain could comprehend. What she saw defied everything they thought they knew about deep space. "How many ships?" she asked quietly. "Ships?" Jean looked up at her with wide eyes. "Captain, I count over 300 vessels. Some of them are larger than Manhattan, and they're all pointed directly at us." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of life support systems. Elena's crew of 47 had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might not return to Earth for decades, if at all. They were explorers, scientists, and dreamers who had pushed humanity's boundaries further than ever before. None of them had expected to find a highway patrol waiting for them. "Time to intercept?" Elena asked. "At current speed, 14 minutes, Jean replied. "Captain, their formation suggests military discipline. Whatever these beings are, they know we're coming." Elena nodded slowly. The Defiant Dawn was equipped with humanity's most advanced technology, but it was an exploration vessel, not a warship. Their weapons consisted of mining lasers, defensive particle screens, and a small complement of short-range missiles intended for clearing asteroid debris. Against 300 alien warships, they might as well throw rocks. "Commander Therese," she called to her first officer. "Sound general quarters. All hands to battle stations." The alarm klaxons echoed through the ship's corridors as her crew scrambled to their positions. Elena remained on the bridge, watching the alien fleet grow larger on their screens. Each ship was a work of art and terror, their hulls gleaming with unknown alloys and bristling with weapon systems that human science couldn't even classify. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," announced Communications Officer Liu. "Multiple frequencies, multiple languages. The computer is trying to establish a translation matrix. Put it through. The bridge speakers crackled with static before resolving into a voice that sounded like grinding metal mixed with music. When the computer finally managed a rough translation, the words sent ice through Elena's veins. Unknown vessel. You have entered restricted space belonging to the Korthak hegemony. Reduce speed immediately and prepare for boarding. Any attempt to alter course or flee will result in your immediate destruction. Elena stared at the tactical display, showing the alien fleet's overwhelming superiority. 300 ships, some the size of small cities, all armed with weapons that could probably vaporize her ship without effort. The smart choice was obvious: comply, surrender, and hope these beings were civilized enough to negotiate. That's what any reasonable captain would do. But Elena Vasquez had not spent 3 years pushing through unknown space by making reasonable choices. Communications, open a channel, she ordered. Channel open, Captain. Elena straightened her uniform and looked directly at the main screen, knowing that somewhere among those alien ships, beings unlike anything humanity had ever imagined were watching her. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Deep Space Exploration vessel Defiant Dawn. We are peaceful explorers from the planet Earth, seeking to establish diplomatic contact with intelligent species. We have no hostile intent and carry only defensive weapons. She paused, letting the translation computers work before continuing. However, we also have no intention of stopping. Our mission comes from the people of Earth, and we will complete it. If you wish to establish peaceful relations, we welcome the opportunity. If you intend to prevent us from continuing our journey, you will find that humans are remarkably difficult to stop. The alien response came back almost immediately, the mechanical voice now carrying an unmistakable edge of anger. Human, you speak of peace while refusing lawful orders from the legitimate authority in this region. The Korthak hegemony has ruled this sector for 2,000 years. Your primitive species has no rights here. Surrender now, or face annihilation. Elena looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. She saw fear there, certainly. Only a fool wouldn't be afraid when facing impossible odds. But she also saw determination, the same stubborn human refusal to bow down that had carried their species from caves to the stars. Engineering, she called. How much power can you give me? Chief Engineer Okafor's voice crackled over the comm system. Captain, if you're asking what I think you're asking, I can push the fusion engines to 130% for maybe 20 minutes before we risk a core breach. Do it. Navigation, plot a course straight through their formation. Maximum speed. Captain, Torres spoke quietly. 300 ships. We can't fight them all. Elena smiled grimly. We're not going to fight them, Commander. We're going to show them something they've probably never seen before. Humans who refuse to be stopped. The Defiant Dawn surged forward as its engines pushed beyond safe parameters. The alien fleet responded immediately, their ships moving to intercept. Weapons systems charged, creating brilliant arcs of energy between their hulls. It was beautiful and terrifying, a display of power that could reduce Elena's ship to atoms. Incoming transmission, Lou announced. They're demanding we stop. Tell them we appreciate their concern, Elena replied. But we have places to be. The first alien ship moved into their path, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed the human vessel. Its weapon ports glowed with threatening energy as it broadcast final warnings. Elena watched it grow larger on their screens, knowing that in moments they would either pass safely by or be scattered across several light years of space. Captain, Jean called out, they're not firing. Sensors show multiple weapon locks on us, but they're not firing. Elena nodded slowly, beginning to understand. They're curious. We're doing something they didn't expect. They want to see what happens next. The Defiant Dawn raced between alien ships, her hull groaning under the stress of engines pushed beyond their design limits. The fleet moved with them, matching their course and speed, creating a corridor of warships that stretched for thousands of kilometers in every direction. Why aren't they shooting? Torres asked. Because, Elena said, watching another massive ship slip past their starboard side. We're not behaving like prey. We're not running away, and we're not attacking. We're doing something they've never encountered before. We're acting like equals. The alien transmissions continued, growing more agitated with each passing minute. The human ship should have been destroyed by now, should have surrendered or fled. Instead, it continued on its impossible course, surrounded by enough firepower to level continents. Captain Okafor's voice carried strain. Fusion containment is reaching critical levels. We can't maintain this speed much longer. How long do we need to clear their formation? At current speed, 6 more minutes. Elena nodded. 6 minutes to either prove that humans belonged among the stars or die trying. Either way, they would not be forgotten. The largest alien ship yet appeared directly ahead of them, a massive construct that seemed to stretch beyond the horizon. Its hull bristled with weapons, communication arrays, and docking bays large enough to hold the defiant Dawn entire. This was clearly a command ship, and its captain was done with games. Unknown human vessel. The transmission came directly from the ship ahead. This is Admiral Vextar of the Korthak Third Fleet. You have entered space claimed by the Galactic Council under ancient treaty. Your species is not recognized as having any legitimate presence in this region. Stop now, or I will open fire. Elena studied the massive ship filling their forward view. Its weapons were charging, energy patterns building that would turn her ship into expanding plasma. This was the moment of truth. Admiral Vextar, she replied. This is Captain Vasquez. We recognize no treaties we did not sign, no claims we did not acknowledge. The universe is vast enough for all of us, and we intend to see our share of it. You may fire if you wish, but we will not stop. The bridge held its breath as seconds stretched into eternity. The alien dreadnought's weapons reached full charge, locked onto the tiny human ship, racing toward certain destruction. And then, impossibly, the massive vessel began to move aside. I'll be damned, Torres whispered. They're letting us through. Elena smiled as the alien fleet parted around them like water around stone. No, Commander. They're learning something new about humans. We keep our word, even when it's dangerous. As the defiant Dawn finally cleared the alien formation and raced toward open space, the communications array crackled with one final transmission from Admiral Vextar. Human Captain, you have impressed the Korthak this day. But know that the galaxy ahead holds dangers far greater than our fleet. What you seek in the dark between has destroyed civilizations more powerful than yours. Turn back now, while you still can. Elena looked at the star charts showing their course ahead, into regions of space that appeared empty on every map humanity possessed. But she had learned something important today. Sometimes the greatest dangers came not from what lay ahead, but from giving up before you reached it. Thank you for the warning, Admiral, she replied. But humans have a saying, the only way out is through. We'll see you on the far side. The defiant Dawn engaged its hyperdrive, leaving the alien fleet behind as it jumped deeper into unknown space. Behind them, 300 warships watched in silent contemplation as a single human vessel disappeared into the darkness, carrying with it the first seeds of change the galaxy had seen in millennia. In his command center, Admiral Vextar stared at the empty space where the human ship had vanished. In 2,000 years of military service, he had never encountered a species that faced overwhelming odds with such calm determination. These humans were either incredibly brave or monumentally foolish. He suspected it might be both. The report he would file with the Galactic Council would be brief and factual. First contact with a previously unknown species, peaceful encounter, no shots fired. But privately, he found himself wondering what else these humans might be capable of, and whether the galaxy was prepared for the answer to that question. Crystalline structure that had served as the seat of interstellar government for over 3 million years. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their species-specific environmental pods, breathing their preferred atmospheres while debating matters that affected trillions of lives across thousands of worlds. Today, they were discussing humans. High Counselor ZFTHWSS of the Nexari Crystalline Collective stood at the center of the chamber, her translucent form shifting through spectrums of color that indicated deep contemplation. As the eldest species in the galaxy, the Nexari traditionally served as mediators in council disputes. Today, that role will be tested. Honored delegates, she began, her voice resonating through the translation matrices that allowed 47 different species to communicate. We are here to address the report filed by Admiral Vextar of the Korthak Third Fleet. For the first time in recorded history, an unknown species has penetrated our outer security perimeters and refused all attempts at peaceful interception. In the Korthak delegation pod, General Thakmor's chitinous form clicked with agitation. His species had evolved from apex predators, and their culture valued strength above all else. The fact that a single alien ship had passed through their fleet unharmed was a source of considerable embarrassment. High Counselor, Thakmor rumbled through his translation device. The human vessel demonstrated clear hostile intent by refusing lawful orders from hegemony forces. They should have been destroyed immediately. With respect, General, interrupted Ambassador Lyrian of the Zephyrian Collective, her melodic mental voice carrying traces of amusement. Your own Admiral's report indicates the human ship carried minimal offensive capabilities. How does refusing to be boarded constitute hostile intent? The chamber erupted in clicking, chirping, and harmonized tones as different species voiced their opinions. The Aquari delegation bubbled their displeasure through their water-filled pod, while the energy beings of the photonic assembly flickered with rapid light patterns indicating heated debate. High Counselor ZFTHSS raised her hand, and the chamber gradually fell silent. The Nexari had maintained peace between vastly different species for millions of years by mastering the art of patient diplomacy. The question before us, she continued, is not what has happened, but what it means for our future. According to our xenobiological surveys, humans achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 Earth years ago. They have no established colonies beyond their home system, no apparent military fleet, and no previous contact with any council species. Yet this single vessel crossed 3,000 light-years of strictly patrolled space to reach our outer borders. Representative Crixtal of the Silicon Confederacy spoke next, her rocky form grinding as she shifted in her high-temperature pod. The navigation alone should have been impossible. The dark between contains gravitational anomalies, quantum storms, and stellar remnants that have prevented exploration for millennia. How did a primitive species map safe passage through such hazards? In the depths of Nexus Station, Chief Analyst Veltar of the Observation Corps reviewed the data streams from the human encounter for the 100th time. As one of the few Korthak scientists rather than warriors, he often found himself caught between his species' aggressive instincts and his own curiosity about the universe's mysteries. The human ship's sensor profile was fascinating. Their technology appeared crude by council standards. Fusion power rather than antimatter. Physical armor instead of energy shields, projectile weapons alongside particle beams. Yet somehow, this seemingly primitive vessel had accomplished something no council ship had ever attempted, a direct crossing of the dark between. Veltar's analysis was interrupted by an urgent alert from the station's sensor network. His screens filled with impossible readings as he worked frantically to verify the incoming data. Control center to council chamber, he announced through the emergency communication system. We have a situation. Back in the council chamber, High Counselor ZFTHYSS responded immediately. Report, Analyst Veltar. High Counselor, our deep space sensors are detecting multiple new contacts approaching the Proxima Defense Grid. The signatures match the human vessel that passed through Korthak space 3 days ago. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the energy beings stopped their constant flickering. Multiple contacts? ZFTHYSS asked carefully. Yes, High Counselor. We count 12 vessels of similar design, all maintaining the same impossible course through the dark between. They appear to be following the exact path of the first ship. General Thakmor rose from his pod with a sound like grinding stone. 12 ships? This is not exploration. This is invasion. The hegemony demands immediate authorization to deploy the Fourth Fleet. General, Ambassador Lyrian interrupted, you just finished complaining that one ship embarrassed your Third Fleet. What exactly do you think the Fourth Fleet will accomplish? The debate that followed threatened to shatter the careful diplomatic protocols that had maintained galactic peace for millennia. The militant species demanded military action, the peaceful ones urged caution, and the ancient Nexari tried desperately to find middle ground. Meanwhile, on the edge of known space, 12 human vessels continued their relentless advance toward the heart of galactic civilization. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Defiant Dawn, now serving as the lead ship of humanity's first deep space exploration fleet. The decision to follow up her initial contact with a full expedition had been made at the highest levels of Earth's government, over the objections of cautious voices who feared provoking an interstellar war. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Jean reported, we're receiving transmissions from the alien fleet ahead. Same language as before, but there are a lot more ships this time. Elena nodded. Her first encounter with the Korthak had taught her valuable lessons about alien psychology. They respected strength and determination, but they also valued precedent. By establishing peaceful passage through their territory, she had created a diplomatic framework that could potentially extend to the entire galaxy. The question was whether other alien species would be as pragmatic as Admiral Vextar. Communications, open a general frequency, Elena ordered. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Deep Space Exploration Fleet. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship among the stars. We have no territorial ambitions and claim no sovereign rights beyond the safety of our own vessels. She paused, watching the tactical display as hundreds of alien ships moved to intercept her small fleet. We do, however, claim the right to peaceful passage through open space and the right to defend ourselves if attacked. We hope for diplomatic contact, but we will not be turned back from our mission. The response came not from Admiral Vextar's familiar mechanical tones, but from a new voice, smoother, more musical, with undertones that suggested vast intelligence and ancient wisdom. Human vessels. This is High Counselor Zeph THYSS of the Galactic Council, speaking from Nexus Station. Your unprecedented journey through the dark between has created considerable discussion among the civilized species of this galaxy. Elena felt a surge of excitement. The Galactic Council. She was making contact with what appeared to be an interstellar government representing multiple species. This was exactly what Earth scientists had hoped for. High Counselor, Elena replied formally. It is an honor to speak with you. The people of Earth have dreamed of this moment since we first looked up at the stars. Captain Vasquez, Zeph THYSS continued. Your species presents us with a unique situation. Never before has an unknown civilization penetrated so deeply into Council space without prior diplomatic contact. Some of our member species view this as a hostile act. Elena glanced at her tactical display, where the alien fleet continued to grow larger and more menacing. We understand their concern, High Counselor. However, we couldn't establish diplomatic contact until we found someone to contact. Our exploration of the dark between was the only way to make that happen. There was a long pause before Zeph THYSS responded. The dark between has claimed the lives of countless explorers over millions of years. How did your species navigate its dangers? For the first time since the conversation began, Elena smiled. This was the question she had been waiting for. High Counselor, humans have a saying, when you can't go around an obstacle, you go through it. We studied the dark between for 20 years before attempting this crossing. We mapped gravitational fields, tracked quantum storms, and plotted safe corridors using mathematics and stubbornness in equal measure. She paused to let that sink in before continuing. More importantly, we accepted that some risks are worth taking. The chance to meet other intelligent species, to learn from beings who have walked among the stars for millions of years. That was worth any danger we might face. On Nexus Station, High Counselor Zeph THYSS found herself in the unprecedented situation of being impressed by a species she had never met. The crystalline Nexary had spent eons cataloging the rise and fall of civilizations across the galaxy. They had seen empires built on conquest, others founded on trade, and still others based on shared knowledge or religious devotion. But humans appeared to be something entirely different, a species motivated by curiosity so intense they would risk everything just to see what lay beyond the next star. Captain Vasquez, ZFTHYSS, said finally, "The Galactic Council extends an invitation for diplomatic contact. However, the terms of that contact remain under discussion. Some of our member species have concerns about human intentions." Elena understood the diplomatic language. Some aliens wanted to blast her fleet out of existence, and the more reasonable ones were trying to prevent an interstellar incident. "High Counselor, we appreciate your invitation and accept it gladly. However, our mission parameters require us to continue our exploration beyond Council space. We hope to establish a permanent diplomatic presence, but our current expedition must proceed as planned." The communication channel crackled with what sounded like multiple voices arguing in languages human ears had never heard. When ZFTHYSS spoke again, her tone carried subtle harmonics that Elena's translator interpreted as surprise and perhaps respect. "Captain, you continue to move toward Council space despite facing overwhelming military opposition. You claim peaceful intent while refusing all attempts at oversight. Help us understand. What exactly does your species hope to accomplish?" Elena looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. She saw the same determination that had carried humanity from their homeworld to the edge of the galaxy, the same refusal to accept limitations that had driven them across impossible distances to reach this moment. "High Counselor," she said quietly, "we hope to prove that the universe is big enough for all of us. We don't want to conquer your territories or challenge your authority. We just want to take our place among the stars as equals." The response came not from ZFTHYSS, but from General Thakmore's harsh mechanical tones. "Equals? Your species has existed for barely a moment in galactic terms. You have no right to claim equality with civilizations that ruled space before your son was born." Elena's reply was calm, but carried steel underneath. "General, respect is earned, not inherited. We've crossed the dark between to reach you. We've faced your fleets without backing down. What more do we need to prove?" For the first time in the conversation, there was genuine silence from the alien fleet. Elena had struck at the heart of galactic politics, the assumption that age automatically conferred authority. For millions of years, the Council had operated on the principle that older civilizations naturally ruled younger ones. Humans were challenging that basic assumption. High Counselor ZFTHYSS finally broke the silence. "Captain Vasquez, the Galactic Council will consider your request for diplomatic recognition and passage rights. However, this decision cannot be made quickly or without extensive deliberation." "We understand, High Counselor," Elena replied. "How long do you need?" "Such decisions typically require several years of committee review, xenological assessment, and cultural evaluation." Elena's laughter surprised everyone on the channel, including herself. "Years? High Counselor, with respect, we've come 3,000 light years in 3 months. We don't have years to wait for committee reviews." "Then what do you propose?" ZFTHYSS asked. "Simple," Elena said. "We continue our mission while you make your decision. When you're ready to establish formal relations, Earth will be waiting. Until then, we'll do what humans do best, explore the unknown, and see what we can learn." The alien fleet maintained its formation around the human ships, weapons armed, but not yet firing. For the first time in galactic history, the Council faced a species that neither sought their protection nor feared their power. It was a situation none of them knew how to handle. And somewhere in the depths of space beyond even the Council's vast territories, ancient sensors detected the approach of ships that should not exist, carrying a species that refused to know its place. In the darkness between galaxies, something that had slumbered for eons began to stir, drawn by the familiar signature of a young civilization that dared to challenge the natural order. The humans were about to learn that some things in the universe were far older and more dangerous than galactic politics. Deep in the archives beneath Nexus Station, Keeper Thanelos of the Nexary Historical Collective accessed memory crystals that had not been activated in 3 million years. As the eldest and most knowledgeable of his species, he alone possessed the authorization codes needed to review the most classified records in galactic history. The arrival of the humans had triggered something ancient in the quantum substrates of space itself. Long-dormant monitoring systems, older than any current Council species, had begun transmitting signals on frequencies that shouldn't have existed. These signals carried a simple message that chilled every xenoarchaeologist who understood their meaning. The predecessors were awakening. High Counselor, Thanelos transmitted through the station's communication grid, his crystalline form pulsing with colors that indicated extreme agitation. We need to convene an emergency session immediately. The human incursion has triggered Protocol Omega. In the Council chamber, ZEF-THYSS received the message with growing alarm. Protocol Omega was theoretical, a contingency plan developed billions of years ago by the Nexary's ancestors for a situation no one expected to face. The awakening of beings so ancient and powerful that even their names have been forgotten. All delegates to emergency session immediately, she announced through the station speakers. Priority classification, extinction event. Within minutes, the chamber filled with representatives from every Council species. The urgency in ZEF-THYSS's tone had overcome the usual diplomatic delays and political maneuvering. When a Nexary invoked extinction protocols, even the most arrogant species paid attention. Keeper Thanelos materialized in the center of the chamber, his ancient form shifting through colors that indicated access to memories older than galactic civilization. Around him, holographic displays activated to show star charts that predated the current galaxy's configuration. Honored delegates, he began, his voice carrying harmonics of vast age and terrible knowledge. What I am about to reveal has been classified for 3 million years. The human incursion into our space was not the first time a young species has attempted to cross the dark between. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The dark between was supposed to be impassable, a natural barrier that protected the civilized galaxy from whatever lay beyond. 68 million years ago, Thanelos continued, a species called the Vorthicay attempted the same journey. They were young, aggressive, and possessed of a curiosity that drove them to explore regions of space we considered forbidden. Like the humans, they successfully navigated the dark between. General Thakmore shifted impatiently in his pod. What happened to them? They disappeared, Thanelos replied simply. Every ship, every colony, every trace of their existence was erased from the galaxy within a single stellar cycle. The only record of their fate was contained in automated monitoring stations they had left behind, stations that recorded the arrival of something from beyond the galactic rim. The holographic displays shifted to show sensor readings from the ancient past. Energy signatures unlike anything in the Council's databases, movement patterns that suggested intelligence beyond any known parameters, and weapon effects that had left entire star systems as empty void. The predecessors, Ambassador Lyrian breathed, her mental voice carrying overtones of ancestral memory. The Zephyrian Collective has legends of the first ones, beings who ruled before time began. We thought they were myths. Every species has such legends, Thanelos confirmed. Because every species that has survived long enough to achieve spaceflight has inherited genetic memories of the last time the predecessors walked among the stars. They are not myths, Ambassador. They are history. High Counselor ZEF-THYSS studied the ancient data with growing dread. Keeper Thanelos, are you suggesting that the human crossing has awakened these beings? Not suggesting, High Counselor. Confirming. Our monitoring systems have detected massive energy signatures moving through intergalactic space toward our position. The same signatures recorded during the Vorthicay incident. The chamber erupted as every species began speaking at once, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of sound light, and psychic emanations. Through it all, one thought dominated every mind present. If beings powerful enough to erase entire species were returning to the galaxy, what hope did anyone have for survival? Meanwhile, 3 billion light-years from Nexus Station, the human exploration fleet continued its steady advance through space that grew stranger with each passing hour. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Defiant Dawn, watching sensor readings that made no sense according to any known laws of physics. "Captain," Lieutenant Commander Jean reported, his voice tight with confusion, "we're detecting artificial structures ahead. But, according to our stellar cartography, there shouldn't be anything out here except empty space." Elena moved to the sensor station, studying the impossible readings. The structures were massive, each one larger than Earth's moon, arranged in complex geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change even as they watched. How many structures?" she asked. "I count 47 distinct objects, but the number keeps changing. It's like they're phasing in and out of normal space." Chief Engineer Okafor's voice crackled over the communication system from the engine room. "Captain, our fusion reactors are acting up. Power output keeps fluctuating, and I'm reading energy discharges I can't explain." Elena frowned. The Defiant Dawn and her sister ships have been running smoothly for months. For all of them to experience simultaneous power problems suggested external interference. "All ships, this is Defiant Dawn," she announced on the fleet frequency. "Report status." The responses came back quickly. Every ship was experiencing the same anomalous readings: power fluctuations, sensor distortions, and gravitational effects that shouldn't exist in what appear to be empty space. "Captain," Communications Officer Liu announced, "I'm receiving a transmission, but it's not coming from any of our ships, and it's not using any known communication protocol." "Put it through." The bridge speakers filled with a sound that was less heard than felt, a deep harmonic vibration that seemed to resonate in the bones of every human present. When the translation computers finally processed the signal, the voice that emerged was unlike anything in Elena's experience. Ancient, patient, vast beyond comprehension. "Young ones," the voice said, each word carrying weight that pressed against human consciousness. "You have traveled far from your small world to reach this place. We sense in you the same restless curiosity that has driven others before you." Elena exchanged glances with her crew. First contact with a second alien species, but this one felt fundamentally different from the Galactic Council. Where the Council species had seemed familiar despite their alien nature, this presence felt utterly foreign. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Deep Space Fleet," she replied formally. "May I ask who I'm speaking with?" "Names are constructs of limited beings," the voice responded. "We are what remains of those who came before. We have watched countless species rise and fall, create and destroy, reach for the stars only to discover they were not ready for what lies between them." Elena felt a chill despite the bridge's environmental controls. "Are you threatening us?" "We do not threaten, Captain Vasquez. We observe. We remember. And, occasionally, when a young species ventures too far from the safety of their home, we must make difficult decisions." The sensor readings shifted again, and Elena watched in fascination and terror as the massive structures ahead revealed their true nature. They were ships, vessels so large that entire planets could have fit inside their hulls. And they were moving toward the human fleet with the slow inevitability of continental drift. "What kind of decisions?" Elena asked quietly. "The same decisions we made regarding the Vorth AK 68 million years ago. The same decisions we made regarding the Carillion Empire 15 million years ago. The same decisions we have made 43 times since we began our vigil." Commander Torres leaned close to Elena's ear. "Captain, whatever these things are, they're talking about genocide." Elena nodded slowly. She was beginning to understand the true nature of the test her species was facing. The Galactic Council had been a preliminary examination, a chance to prove that humans could coexist with other intelligent species. But these predecessors represented something far more fundamental. They were the guardians of the galaxy itself. Why? Elena asked. What did these species do to deserve destruction? They did what you're doing now, Captain, the ancient voice replied. They explored beyond their boundaries. They refused to accept the limitations placed upon them. They sought to expand into regions of space that were not meant for their kind. And that justifies extinction? You misunderstand our purpose, the voice said with infinite patience. We do not destroy out of malice or territorial ambition. We destroy to protect the galaxy from threats it cannot comprehend. There are things in the dark between galaxies that should not be awakened. There are powers that should not be disturbed. Young species, in their innocence and ambition, often trigger events that lead to consequences beyond their imagination. Elena stared at the massive ships filling her forward view. Each one was a monument to technology and power beyond human comprehension. Yet their builders spoke of protecting the galaxy from even greater threats. What kind of threats? She asked. The kind that end universes, the voice replied simply. The kind that consume entire galactic clusters and leave nothing but emptiness in their wake. The kind that we have spent billions of years ensuring remain dormant in the spaces between realities. The human fleet had stopped its advance, surrounded by predecessor vessels that made their ships look like motes of dust around burning stars. Elena realized that this moment would determine not just the fate of her expedition, but the future of humanity itself. So what happens now? She asked. Now, Captain Vasquez, you face the same test that every expanding species must eventually face. Will you turn back to the safety of your home galaxy and accept the boundaries that protect all life? Or will you continue forward, risking not just your own species, but every sentient being in the known universe? Elena looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. She saw fear there, certainly, but also the same stubborn determination that had brought them this far. They were explorers, dreamers, and pioneers who had volunteered for a mission that might take them away from Earth forever. Can I ask you something? Elena said to the ancient voice. Speak. In all the billions of years you've been watching, has any species ever passed your test? There was a long pause before the predecessor responded, and when it did, Elena detected something that might have been surprise in its ancient tone. No, Captain. Every species that has reached this point has either turned back or been destroyed. You are the first to ask that question. Elena smiled grimly. Then, maybe it's time for a change. Humanity didn't cross 3 billion light years just to turn back at the first sign of danger. If there are threats to the galaxy, then we want to help stop them. If there are powers that shouldn't be awakened, then we want to help keep them sleeping. You would risk your entire species for beings you have never met. We would risk our entire species for the right to stand as equals among the stars, Elena replied. That's what makes us human. The communication fell silent, and Elena wondered if she had just sealed humanity's doom. Around the fleet, the massive predecessor ships hung motionless in space, their alien intelligences considering a response that had never been given before. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the ancient voice spoke again. Fascinating. Captain Vasquez, you have presented us with a possibility we had not considered. Perhaps it is time for a different kind of test. What kind of test? Elena asked. The kind that will determine whether humanity is ready to join us in protecting the galaxy from the things that lurk in the dark between realities. The kind that will either prove your species worthy of the responsibility they seek or demonstrate why they must be stopped before they trigger an extinction event for every sentient being in existence. Elena felt her heart rate increase as the implications sank in. When does this test begin? It has already begun, Captain. 3 days ago, your passage through the dark between activated an ancient beacon. Something that has slept since the universe was young is now stirring in the depths of intergalactic space. If it fully awakens, it will consume this galaxy and everything in it. The massive ships around the human fleet began to move, forming a protective formation that encompassed the tiny Earth vessels like a shield of living metal and energy. Welcome to the real test, Captain Vasquez. Let us see if humanity is ready to save the universe. The combined fleet of human and predecessor vessels moved through space that grew increasingly hostile with each passing hour. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist around them as they approached the source of the ancient beacon that humanity's passage had inadvertently activated. On the bridge of the Defiant Dawn, Captain Elena Vasquez watched readings that defied every law of physics she had ever learned. "Captain," Lieutenant Commander Jean reported, his voice strained from hours of monitoring impossible sensor data. "Spatial distortion is increasing exponentially. According to these readings, we're approaching a region where normal space-time breaks down completely." Elena nodded grimly. The predecessor ship Eternal Vigil had linked its navigation systems with the human fleet, allowing her crew to witness firsthand the approach to something that shouldn't exist. Through the quantum communication link, the ancient consciousness that served as the predecessor's commander had been explaining the true nature of the threat they faced. "The entity you have awakened," the ageless voice had told her, "exists in the spaces between realities. It feeds on the quantum substrate that holds universes together. When it is fully active, it can drain the life force from entire galactic clusters, leaving nothing but empty void where billions of civilizations once thrived." The communication channel crackled as the predecessor commander continued their briefing. "Your species has designated it with their word devourer, though its true nature transcends any language. It has slept since the last galactic civilization grew powerful enough to threaten universal stability, approximately 2 billion years ago." Elena studied the tactical displays, showing the formation of predecessor ships around her small fleet. Each vessel was larger than any human construction, bristling with weapons and defense systems that manipulated fundamental forces she barely understood. Yet even these godlike beings seemed worried about what lay ahead. "Commander," she addressed the ancient consciousness, "if your people are so powerful, why do you need our help?" "Because, Captain Vasquez, raw power is not always the solution to cosmic threats. The Devourer cannot be destroyed through force. It exists partially outside normal reality and feeds on energy directed against it. Every previous attempt to stop it through direct conflict has only made it stronger. Then, how do we fight it? We don't fight it. We convince it to return to dormancy. And that requires something your species possesses that ours has long since lost." Elena frowned. "What could humans possibly have that you don't?" "Unpredictability, chaos, the ability to think in ways that transcend logic and reason. Every predecessor response to cosmic threats has become codified over billions of years. We follow patterns, algorithms, predetermined strategies. The Devourer has learned to counter all of them." The implication was staggering. Beings who had existed since the birth of galaxies were asking humans for help because humanity was too young and chaotic to be predictable. "Captain," Chief Engineer Okafor's voice came through the communication system, "I'm reading massive energy buildup ahead. Whatever's out there is starting to wake up." Elena looked at the main display, where space itself appeared to be unraveling. Stars were winking out of existence, leaving holes in reality that hurt to look at. The fabric of the universe was being eaten away by something that existed in the gaps between atoms, the spaces between thoughts. "All ships, this is Defiant Dawn," Elena announced on the fleet frequency. "We are approaching the most dangerous situation in human history. What we do in the next few hours will determine whether our species survives to see tomorrow and whether this galaxy continues to exist." The responses came back immediately from the 11 other human vessels. Confirmations of readiness, expressions of determination, and the kind of gallows humor that humans use to cope with impossible situations. "Standing by for whatever insane plan you're cooking up, Captain," came the voice of Captain Morrison from the exploration ship Pioneer's Dream. "Just remember, if we all die horribly, I'm blaming you in my report to headquarters." Elena smiled despite the circumstances. Even facing cosmic annihilation, humans remained stubbornly human. The predecessor commander spoke again, its ancient voice carrying new harmonics that Elena's translator interpreted as urgency. Captain, we are approaching the Devourer's awakening zone. In moments, it will become aware of our presence. Once that happens, our window of opportunity closes. What exactly are we supposed to do? Elena asked. Something we have never attempted in 4 billion years of existence. We are going to try reasoning with it. The forward sensors detected movement in the void ahead. Not the movement of matter, but the movement of absence itself. Reality twisted and folded as something impossibly vast began to stir in the darkness between galaxies. The Devourer was awakening, and its hunger was cosmic in scale. "My God," whispered Commander Torres, staring at the displays. "How big is that thing?" "Size is relative when dealing with extra-dimensional entities," the predecessor commander replied. "The portion of the Devourer that exists in our reality is approximately the size of your solar system. The majority of its being exists in parallel dimensions, drawing power from the quantum foundations of space-time itself." Elena watched as the entity's awakening created ripples in reality that reached across thousands of light years. Entire star systems flickered like candles in a hurricane as the Devourer's presence began to affect the fundamental constants that held matter together. "Communication," she ordered. "Open a channel to that thing." "Captain," Lou responded uncertainly, "I'm not sure our equipment can establish contact with something like this." The predecessor commander intervened. "We will provide the necessary interface. However, Captain, you should understand that communicating with the Devourer is unlike anything your species has experienced. It does not think as organic beings think. Its consciousness spans dimensions and encompasses concepts that have no equivalent in material existence." "I understand," Elena replied, though she wasn't sure she really did. "Open the channel." The bridge fell silent as quantum communication arrays established contact with an intelligence older than stars. When the Devourer's voice filled the speakers, it was like listening to the death of universes, a sound that conveyed ending, entropy, and the inevitable heat death of all things. Small things wake the sleeper. Small things disturb the dark between. Why do the meat creatures venture where they do not belong? Elena forced herself to speak despite every instinct screaming at her to flee. "We are explorers from the planet Earth. We seek to learn about the universe and our place in it. We didn't know our presence would disturb your rest. Ignorance is no excuse for consequence. The young species always claim innocence as they stumble toward catastrophe. How many galaxies must feed the void before the meat creatures learn their limitations?" Elena could feel the entity's attention like a weight on her soul, pressing against her mind with the accumulated hunger of eons. Around the fleet, reality continued to unravel as the Devourer's awakening gathered momentum. "How many species have you destroyed?" Elena asked. "Destruction implique malice." "We do not destroy. We consume. We convert the chaos of existence into the peace of nothingness. We have consumed 43 galaxies since the young species began their expansion beyond safe boundaries." 43 galaxies, Elena repeated quietly. Trillions of sentient beings. Suffering ends in the void. Struggle ceases in the darkness. We offer the ultimate peace to all who disturb the balance. Elena looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. She saw fear there, but also determination and the stubborn human refusal to accept defeat. Somewhere in the back of her mind, an impossible idea began to form. "What if we could offer you something better than consumption?" she asked suddenly. The Devourer's response carried overtones of surprise. "Better? There is nothing beyond the peace of non-existence." "You say you offer peace by ending suffering," Elena continued, her voice growing stronger as the idea took shape. "But what about the joy you're ending as well? What about love, discovery, creation, hope? When you consume a galaxy, you're not just ending pain. You're ending everything beautiful that species might have created. Beauty is temporary. Joy fades. Only the void is eternal." "Maybe," Elena admitted, "but temporary beauty is still beauty. A flower that blooms for one day is still beautiful while it exists. A species that creates art for 1 million years is still creative while it survives. She paused, gathering her thoughts as the cosmic entity's attention focused more intensely on her words. You speak of offering peace through ending existence. But we offer something different. We offer meaning through continued existence. We explore, we create, we love, we struggle, and yes, we suffer. But we do it all with purpose. Purpose is illusion. Meaning is construct of limited minds. Elena smiled. Maybe it is, but it's our illusion, and it's what makes us who we are. Isn't the right to choose our own meaning, even if it's temporary, worth more than the certainty of nothingness? For the first time since the conversation began, the devourer fell silent. Around the fleet, the unraveling of space-time slowed as the entity considered Elena's words. The predecessor commander spoke privately to Elena through a quantum-encrypted channel. Captain, no one has ever challenged the devourer's philosophy before. We have always focused on trying to force it back into dormancy. You are attempting something unprecedented. Sometimes the best way to stop a fight is to change the subject, Elena replied. It's clear this thing has been alone for billions of years, consuming galaxies because it thinks existence is meaningless. Maybe what it really needs is a conversation. The devourer's voice returned, but now it carried new harmonics, curiosity mixed with ancient loneliness. The meat creature speaks of meaning as though it were real. Show us this meaning. Demonstrate this purpose. Elena thought for a moment, then activated her personal communication device. Computer, access my personal files. Play recording Sierra 7 Alpha. The bridge speakers filled with a different sound, the laughter of Elena's daughter, recorded just before the defiant dawn left Earth 3 years ago. It was the sound of pure joy, of a child delighting in the simple pleasure of existence. That's meaning, Elena said quietly. A little girl laughing because she's happy to be alive. She doesn't understand cosmic forces or universal entropy. She just knows that existence feels good, and she wants to share that feeling with everyone around her. The recording continued, capturing Elena's daughter singing a simple song about friendship and adventure. Around the fleet, the fabric of space-time stopped unraveling entirely as the devourer listened to something it had never heard before, the sound of innocent joy. This is what we're fighting to preserve, Elena continued. Not just life, but the capacity for happiness, the ability to find meaning in simple moments, the courage to love something even though you know you'll lose it eventually. When the recording ended, the silence stretched for what felt like hours. Finally, the devourer spoke again, its voice carrying harmonics that Elena couldn't interpret. We had not considered this perspective. In 4 billion years of existence, we have focused only on ending suffering. We had forgotten that mortals also create joy. Elena felt a surge of hope. That's what exploration is about, not just discovering new places, but creating new possibilities. Every species that reaches for the stars adds something unique to the universe. Every civilization that thrives brings new forms of beauty into existence. But the suffering still exists, Elena admitted. We don't pretend otherwise. But we've learned that the solution to suffering isn't to end existence. It's to make existence meaningful enough that the joy outweighs the pain. The cosmic entity considered this for a long moment before responding. Perhaps there is wisdom in the young species' perspective. Perhaps the void is not the only form of peace. Elena held her breath as the devourer made its decision. We will return to dormancy, not because we have been defeated, but because we choose to allow the experiment of existence to continue. Perhaps in time, the young species will teach us forms of meaning we have not considered. Around the fleet, space-time began to stabilize as the cosmic entity pulled its consciousness back into the spaces between realities. The immediate threat was over, but Elena knew that humanity had just taken on a responsibility that would last for generations. They had convinced a cosmic force to spare the universe by promising that existence had meaning. Now, they had to make sure that promise remained true. 6 months after the encounter with the Devourer, Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the observation deck of Nexus Station, watching the construction of humanity's first permanent embassy in galactic space. The massive structure, built with a combination of human engineering and alien technology, represented more than just diplomatic progress. It symbolized humanity's acceptance as an equal partner in galactic civilization. The journey to this moment had been far from simple. Following the resolution of the Devourer crisis, the Galactic Council had faced the unprecedented challenge of integrating a species that had proven itself capable of reasoning with cosmic entities that even the predecessors couldn't defeat through force. The diplomatic negotiations had lasted months, with every major species demanding explanations for how a primitive civilization had accomplished the impossible. The humans didn't defeat the Devourer, High Counselor HFY had explained to the assembled delegates. They changed its mind. In 4 billion years, none of us thought to try that approach. Elena smiled at the memory as she watched human construction crews working alongside Nexari, crystalline engineers, and Korthak technical specialists. The embassy was being built as a joint project, with each species contributing their unique capabilities. The result would be something no single civilization could have created alone. Captain Vasquez, came a familiar harmonic voice behind her. Elena turned to see HFY approaching, her crystalline form shifting through colors that indicated warm greeting and deep respect. The High Counselor had become an unexpected ally during the diplomatic process, arguing forcefully for humanity's inclusion in council affairs despite resistance from more conservative species. High Counselor, Elena replied with a bow. How are the preparations for the formal ceremony? Complex. As always, when 47 different species attempt to agree on protocol, HFY replied with what Elena had learned to recognize as Nexari humor. However, I believe we have reached consensus on the major points. Humanity will be granted full member status, including representation on the Security Council and access to all standard diplomatic protections. Elena nodded, though her expression remained thoughtful. And the other matter? HFY's colors shifted to more serious tones. The predecessor alliance has agreed to humanity's proposal. You will be granted access to their monitoring systems and early warning networks. However, they maintain that final authority for cosmic threat response remains with their commanders. That's fair, Elena said. We're not asking to command ancient beings who've been protecting the galaxy since before Earth existed. We just want to help. The truth was more complex than Elena was willing to discuss publicly. The encounter with the Devourer had revealed disturbing facts about the nature of cosmic threats. The entity that had nearly consumed the galaxy was just one of many similar beings dormant in the spaces between realities. Worse, the predecessor's files contained records of even greater threats, things that made the Devourer seem manageable by comparison. Humanity's unique approach to cosmic diplomacy had proven effective, but it also meant taking responsibility for a universe full of sleeping nightmares that could be awakened by any species curious enough to explore beyond their boundaries. Captain HFY continued. There is something else we need to discuss. The deep space monitoring stations have detected unusual activity in the Andromeda region. Energy signatures that match predecessor records of extinct civilizations. Elena felt a chill despite the station's comfortable temperature. Extinct civilizations rising again? Unknown. The predecessors are investigating, but they have requested human participation in the survey mission. They believe our unconventional perspective may be necessary if first contact protocols are required. Elena looked out at the growing embassy, then at the stars beyond. Humanity had barely begun to understand their place in the galactic community, and already they were being called upon to face new challenges that might determine the fate of multiple galaxies. When do we leave? She asked. The survey fleet departs in 6 days. However, Captain, this mission will be different from your previous explorations. You will be working directly with predecessor forces, using technology that exceeds human understanding by millions of years. Are you prepared for that level of responsibility? Elena thought about her crew aboard the Defiant Dawn, about the other captains who had volunteered for missions that might take them away from Earth for decades, about the billion humans back on their homeworld who were counting on their representatives to prove worthy of their new status among the stars. High Counselor, she said finally, 3 years ago, we set out to explore unknown space and see if we could find our place in the universe. We never expected to become cosmic diplomats or help save galactic civilization from entities that exist partially outside reality. She paused, watching a group of human technicians working alongside alien engineers to install quantum communication arrays in the embassy structure. But that's the thing about humans, we adapt. We take on challenges we don't fully understand because someone has to, and we're stubborn enough to see them through. If there are extinct civilizations returning to life in Andromeda, then, yes, we need to find out what they want and whether they pose a threat. Elena turned back to HFY, her expression determined. Besides, if the predecessors think they need human unpredictability to handle this situation, then we probably do too. The universe has turned out to be a much stranger place than any of us imagined. 3 days later, Elena stood on the bridge of an impossible ship. The predecessor vessel Cosmic Horizon was larger than most space stations, its hull constructed from materials that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The technology was so advanced that human scientists couldn't even describe how it functioned, let alone replicate it. Captain Vasquez, the ship's ancient consciousness, addressed her through quantum communication links. We are approaching the Andromeda anomaly. Sensor readings confirm massive artificial structures of unknown origin. Elena studied the displays, showing energy patterns that defied analysis. Whatever was out, there was clearly intelligent and possessed technology that rivaled or exceeded even predecessor capabilities. Any response to our communication attempts? She asked. Negative. The entities appear to be ignoring all standard first contact protocols. However, we are detecting what may be archaeological activities on several worlds in the target region. Elena frowned. Archaeological activities? You mean they're digging? More precisely, they appear to be excavating structures that predate galactic civilization. Sites that our records indicate were destroyed during the last great extinction event 2 billion years ago. The implications were staggering. If ancient civilizations were returning from extinction and digging up artifacts from the galaxy's prehistory, they might be seeking technology or knowledge that had been deliberately buried to prevent its misuse. Captain, came a new voice over the communication system. Commander Torres from the human contingent aboard the predecessor ship. We're receiving a transmission. It's not coming from the unknown entities in Andromeda. Who's sending it? Elena asked. According to the signal analysis, it's coming from Earth. Elena felt her heart skip. A transmission from Earth meant either very good news or very bad news. At this distance, any message would have been sent months ago using humanity's fastest communication systems. Put it through. The message that played was a recording from Admiral Harrison, head of Earth's Deep Space Command. His weathered face appeared on the main display, and Elena could see the weight of responsibility in his eyes. Captain Vasquez, if you're receiving this message, it means you've successfully established diplomatic relations with the galactic community. Congratulations on an achievement that will be remembered for as long as humanity exists among the stars. He paused, and Elena noticed tension lines around his eyes that hadn't been there when she left Earth. However, I need to inform you of developments here that may affect your mission. 3 weeks ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected massive energy signatures approaching from the direction of the galactic core. Whatever's coming isn't using standard faster-than-light travel. It's moving through dimensions we can't even detect properly. Elena felt ice in her stomach. First the anomaly in Andromeda, and now unknown entities approaching Earth from the opposite direction. The approaching objects will reach our solar system in approximately 18 months, Admiral Harrison continued. We've shared this information with the Galactic Council, but their response has been concerning. According to their records, These energy signatures match those of beings called the architects, entities that supposedly went extinct before the current galaxy was fully formed. The message continued with technical details and contingency plans, but Elena barely heard them. She was beginning to understand the true scope of what humanity had gotten itself into by joining galactic civilization. The universe wasn't just home to currently existing species and ancient guardians like the predecessors. It was also filled with extinct civilizations that could apparently return from death, cosmic entities that existed partially outside reality, and now something called the Architects that even the Galactic Council feared. "Captain," the predecessor commander spoke quietly, "the Admiral's message confirms our worst fears. The awakening of the Devourer appears to have triggered a cascade effect. Beings and entities that have slept for eons are stirring throughout the galaxy." Elena stared at the displays showing the unknown activities in Andromeda, then thought about the mysterious architects approaching Earth. Humanity had wanted to prove they belonged among the stars. Now they were about to get more opportunity than they had ever bargained for. "Commander," she said to the predecessor consciousness, "I think it's time we got some answers about what we're really dealing with. Can this ship reach Andromeda in time to make contact with whatever's excavating those ruins?" "Yes, Captain. However, I should warn you that first contact with extinct civilizations carries risks we cannot calculate. These beings may have returned from death with purposes we cannot understand." Elena thought about her daughter's laughter, about the joy and determination that had convinced the Devourer to spare the galaxy, about the millions of humans back on Earth who were counting on their representatives to navigate the dangers of cosmic politics. "Commander," she said finally, "6 months ago, we convinced a cosmic entity to spare the universe by explaining the value of existence. If extinct civilizations are returning to life, maybe they need the same kind of conversation." The cosmic horizon adjusted its course toward the Andromeda anomaly, carrying Elena and her crew toward another impossible challenge. Behind them, across the vast distances of intergalactic space, other forces were moving as well. Ancient powers awakening after eons of dormancy, driven by purposes that transcended mortal understanding. The galaxy was changing, and humanity found itself at the center of events that would determine whether intelligent life survived to see the next cosmic age. It was exactly the kind of impossible responsibility that humans had always been too stubborn to refuse. As the ship entered hyperspace, Elena smiled grimly. They had wanted to explore the unknown and find their place among the stars. Mission accomplished, though their place had turned out to be far more complex and dangerous than anyone had imagined. But that was fine. Humans had always done their best work when facing impossible odds. The universe was about to learn just how stubborn a species could be when they refused to accept that anything was truly impossible. And somewhere in the depths of space, ancient beings that had forgotten the meaning of hope were about to be reminded why young civilizations were worth protecting. The real adventure was just beginning.